I was standing at the altar. Music playing. My hand in Nathan's. The guests quiet and waiting. My heart should have been calm. But it wasn't. Because when I looked out into the crowd, I saw him. Leo. The best man. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The kind of shift you feel in your chest before you even understand why. Like your body knows the truth before your mind does. But to explain that moment, I have to take you back. 1 week earlier. It was a Thursday night. Our rehearsal dinner. Soft music, flickering candles, friends gathered around. Nathan was glowing in the way men do when everything is going exactly according to plan. We'd been together 5 years. And in many ways, this wedding felt inevitable. I'm 43. This would be my second marriage. My first ended quietly. No scandal. Just 2 people slowly drifting apart until there was nothing left to save. When I met Nathan, I wasn't looking for passion. I was looking for peace. And for a long time, he gave me exactly that. Then Leo walked in. He was late. Of course he was. Dressed in a dark suit with the top buttons undone, sleeves casually rolled, no tie. His presence filled the room like a gust of wind through an open window. Uninvited but needed. Nathan saw him and froze for just a second before forcing a smile. They hugged briefly, like men who used to know each other but forgot how to mean it. I'd never met Leo. Nathan rarely spoke about him. Just said they were close once, until they weren't. Later, while I was refilling my glass, Leo approached me. So, you're the bride, he said, his voice low and steady. And you must be the best man, I replied. Depends who you ask, he said with a smile that made me want to ask too many questions. He didn't feel like someone you meet. He felt like someone you remember. He asked how long Nathan and I had been together. I said 5 years. That's a long time to pretend everything is fine, he said. Then took a sip of his drink. I blinked. Excuse me? Leo just looked at me and said, Nathan used to laugh with his whole body. You ever see that? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure I had. That night, lying beside Nathan, I watched him sleep. Peacefully. As if the world made perfect sense. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was on the outside of my own life. Looking in. The next day, we were setting up chairs at the venue. Nathan had a last-minute work call, so it ended up being just me and Leo. We worked in silence at first. The kind of silence that says more than it hides. He asked me if I loved Nathan. Of course I do, I said. Too quickly. Leo didn't respond. Just looked at me for a long time, then said, You don't have to lie to me. I'm not the one you're marrying. I felt my face flush. My hands were trembling as I adjusted a ribbon on one of the chairs. We didn't speak again. But the air between us was louder than any words. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood alone by the window. Outside, the night was calm. Too calm for what I felt inside. Then my phone buzzed. It was Leo. Can't sleep either. Meet me on the balcony. 5 minutes. I stared at the message. My heart beating harder than it had in years. I should have ignored it. But I didn't. And I already knew. 5 minutes. That's all it took to unravel everything I thought I was sure of. The air was cold on the balcony. Crisp. Still. That kind of quiet that makes you hear your own thoughts more than you want to. I stepped outside, pulling my sweater tighter. And there he was. Leo. He didn't look surprised to see me. Just offered a small nod, the kind that said he knew I'd come. Whether I wanted to or not. Couldn't sleep, I said quietly. Same, he replied. Thought the air might help. For a moment, we just stood there, side by side. Not speaking. Not touching. But present. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full. Like the conversation was happening between the words. He glanced sideways. Big day tomorrow, he said. It is. Are you ready? I hesitated. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wasn't sure which version of it I wanted to say. I think so, I said. He nodded. A slow, thoughtful nod. Like he understood I wasn't entirely lying, but not entirely telling the truth either. You and Nathan, he paused, as if checking if the sentence deserved to finish. You seem good together. We are, I said. Mostly. I let the word hang there. It was honest. And that scared me more than anything. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. His expression was softer now. Less guarded than I'd seen it before. I've been thinking about the past, he said. More than I usually let myself. About you and Nathan? I asked. About a lot of things, he said. Nathan and I were kids when we met. He always played it safe. I didn't. That worked for a while. Then it didn't. He looked out at the dark trees just beyond the railing. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed close, he continued. If we'd figured it out. But people change. Or maybe they just become more of what they already were. I studied him. The way his brow tightened when he spoke. The way he talked like he was remembering a version of himself he didn't fully trust. And what about now? I asked. Now I think some things are better left unsaid, he replied. We fell into silence again. A slower kind of silence this time. One where the words weren't needed. I didn't know how long we stood there like that. But eventually, I asked the one thing I hadn't dared until now. Why did you come? He looked at me, really looked at me, then said. Because Nathan asked me to. And because I needed to see who he was marrying. And now I know. His voice wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't coy. It was simple. Honest. And something in it made my chest ache. I should go, I said. He nodded. Yeah. Probably. But I didn't move. Not right away. I looked at him. At the man who had said very little but somehow made everything louder inside me. There was no touch. No kiss. Just the weight of something unspoken passing between us like a breath too heavy to hold. He opened the door for me, held it without a word. I stepped inside, and for a moment I thought I'd turn around. But I didn't. That night, lying next to Nathan, I watched the ceiling and listened to his breathing. He was still. Peaceful. And all I could think about was the silence out there on that balcony. The things I didn't say. The things Leo didn't say. Something had shifted. And even though I'd done nothing wrong, I knew I was already standing at a ledge. And I had no idea which way I'd fall. The morning after the balcony, I woke before the sun. My mind already spinning. Nathan was still asleep. One arm thrown over the pillow I had abandoned hours earlier. Peaceful. As always. But something in me wasn't. I showered longer than usual. Watched the steam rise from my skin and wondered if anyone else had noticed how quiet I had become lately. How far away I felt from the life around me. The day moved fast. Family arrived. Vendors buzzed around the venue. Nathan was in full host mode, charming everyone, answering questions, giving instructions. He was good at it. He always had been. But the more he smiled, the more I felt something tugging at the edge of my chest. A feeling I couldn't place. Like I was watching a life I was supposed to belong to, and yet didn't. Late in the afternoon, I caught a moment alone with Nathan's sister, Rachel. She had always been kind to me. A little guarded, but kind. She handed me a cup of tea and studied my face. You okay? She asked, gently. Of course, I said. Just tired. You seem, somewhere else, she said. I didn't respond. Then she added, Leo being here doesn't make that easier, does it? I looked up sharply. What do you mean? She shrugged. You don't have to say anything. I saw the way he looked at you last night. I forced a smile. Tried to laugh it off. But my voice came out thinner than I expected. It's nothing. Rachel didn't push. She just sipped her tea and said, maybe. But sometimes the hardest decisions come when you've done nothing wrong, yet. The word yet sat heavy in the air. That night, Nathan and I had dinner alone. Just the two of us. One last quiet moment before the wedding. He lit candles. Ordered from my favorite place. Played our playlist in the background. He was trying. I saw it. I felt it. But I couldn't stop watching how he avoided asking me anything deeper. How the night stayed on the surface, safe, smooth, familiar. And how different it felt from that stillness out on the balcony. After dinner, he took my hand. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked. I hesitated. Then nodded. He smiled. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride I've ever seen." He meant it. I didn't doubt that. And still, I felt a kind of grief settle quietly inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. I stared out the window, waiting for my thoughts to settle. But they didn't. I picked up my phone. I almost messaged Leo. But I didn't. Instead, I opened a message thread I hadn't touched in years. My ex-husband's. Not to write. Just to look. To remind myself of who I used to be. What I used to want. What I had walked away from. And I realized something. That first marriage ended not because of something dramatic. But because I kept telling myself this is good enough until I no longer recognized myself. I had promised I wouldn't do that again. But here I was. On the edge of a second wedding. Wondering if I was making the same mistake twice, but with a better man this time. The next morning, I walked out onto the porch to get some air before the final prep began. And there was Leo. Sitting on the steps. Coffee in hand. Like he belonged there. Like he had always been there. We looked at each other for a long moment. Neither of us smiled. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I answered. "Sleep okay?" "No," I said. "Not really." He nodded, like he knew why. He didn't ask me questions. He didn't say anything heavy. Instead, he handed me the second cup of coffee in his hand and said, "Sit with me. Just for a minute." So I did. And for a few quiet, stolen moments, we just sat there. Breathing in the stillness. Feeling the sun on our skin. Nothing happened. But everything had already changed. The night before the wedding didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a countdown. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that lets every thought grow louder in your head. Nathan had gone to stay at his brother's for the night. Some old tradition. No peeking at the bride before the big moment. He kissed me on the forehead before he left, told me he couldn't wait to see me walk down the aisle. And then he was gone. I stood in the doorway long after his car pulled away. The silence in the house settled around me like dust. Everyone else had gone home. The last of the wine glasses had been rinsed. The lights were low. The playlist had stopped. I was alone. Or I thought I was. I walked into the kitchen and found Leo standing by the sink. His sleeves were rolled up. He was drying a glass. Like he'd done it 100 times. I paused in the doorway. "I thought you left," I said. He glanced at me, quiet. "I was about to. But Rachel told me you were still up. I thought maybe you could use some company." I should have said no. I should have told him I needed space. That I didn't want to talk. But I didn't. I walked past him, poured myself some water, and leaned against the counter. The air felt different now. Still. But charged. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked. It was a simple question. One people had been asking all week. But from him, it landed different. "I think so," I said. Then added, softly, "I don't know." He looked at me. Not with judgment. Just with the kind of stillness that waits for the truth to rise on its own. "I've done this before," I said. Marriage. Promises. Forever. And I told myself if I ever did it again, it would be for the right reasons. And now I'm not sure what the right reason is anymore. He didn't answer. just nodded slowly. There's something about silence with the right person. It doesn't ask for anything. It just gives you room to breathe. He set the towel down and leaned back against the sink. I never expected to see you, I said. Nathan barely talks about you. I didn't even know you were coming. He exhaled. Yeah. I didn't think I would, either. Then why did you? Because when he called, it surprised me. And because I needed to see if he'd changed. And Leo gave a soft shrug. Maybe he has. Maybe he hasn't. But you weren't what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who matched the version of Nathan I remembered. Safe. Predictable. All edges filed down. And what am I? He looked at me. Long and steady. You're the kind of quiet people don't notice until it's missing. The words hit deeper than I expected. My chest tightened. Not with pain. With recognition. I looked down at the glass in my hands. My reflection in the water. And then I said it. I don't know who I am with him anymore. I don't know if I ever did. Leo stepped forward slightly. Just enough to close the space without touching me. You've been trying to make yourself smaller, he said. For years. I see it in the way you smile when you're tired. In the way you say you're fine when you're clearly somewhere else. And I hated how right he was. My eyes stung. I blinked quickly, trying to hold myself together. This shouldn't be happening, I said. Not tonight. Maybe not. But here we are. We stood there. Inches apart. Breathing the same air. He didn't touch me. But he didn't have to. Every part of me felt pulled to him. And every part of me screamed to pull away. I can't do this, I whispered. I know. If I let this happen. You don't have to, he said. His voice quiet. Steady. I'm not here to take anything from you. I just needed you to know that someone sees you. Really sees you. My breath caught. And then, slowly, like gravity made the choice for me, I stepped forward. He didn't move. But I did. I rested my forehead against his chest. His hand hovered near my back but didn't settle there. And in that moment, I felt more like myself than I had in years. No kiss. No touch. Just closeness. That was all it took. After a while, I pulled back. I should sleep, I said. Yeah, he replied. You should. We didn't say goodbye. I turned, walked down the hallway, and shut the door behind me. But sleep never came. Because now I had to ask myself something I had been avoiding all along. What happens if the person I'm marrying tomorrow isn't the one I can be honest with tonight? The morning of the wedding arrived like a wave I couldn't outrun. The sun was out. The sky was clear. Birds chirped like nothing was wrong. Inside, the house was full of motion. Steam from hair straighteners, champagne glasses clinking, laughter bouncing off the walls. My dress hung near the window. Lace and ivory and softness. All the things this day was supposed to be. But I didn't feel soft. I felt like glass. Every movement felt rehearsed. Every word from the people around me felt like something out of a play. And I was the lead. Except I didn't know my lines anymore. Rachel came in to check on me. She smiled gently, adjusting the veil that hadn't even touched my head yet. Almost time, she said. I nodded. You okay? I opened my mouth. But nothing came. She watched me for a moment, then said quietly, if you're not sure, don't do it for the crowd. They'll all go home. But you have to live in it. Then she left the room, like she hadn't just said something I would hear in my head for the rest of the day. I stood in front of the mirror in my slip. Hair done. Makeup perfect. The version of myself I was supposed to be. I stared at her. I didn't recognize her. When I finally put the dress on, it fit like it was made for someone else. The photographer came. Took photos. Posed me. Told me to smile. I did. But inside, my chest was full of cement. Then the knock came at the door. It wasn't Rachel. It wasn't my mother. It was Leo. He didn't step inside. Just stood in the hallway, holding something in his hand. A small envelope. I should have told him to leave. But I didn't. He didn't look at me in the dress. He looked at my face. Only my face. I'm not here to mess anything up, he said. I just needed to give you this. What is it? I asked. He hesitated. Something I wrote. Last night. After you left. He handed it to me. Then paused. If you never read it, that's okay. But if you do it before you walk down that aisle. Then he left. I stood there holding it like it was made of fire. I didn't want to open it. But I did. His handwriting was messy. A little rushed. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a plea. It was just one page. A page about seeing someone he never expected. About watching her shrink herself into a life she didn't deserve. About knowing the difference between being needed and being seen. And at the bottom, just one line. If today is about promises, just make sure they're the kind you won't regret keeping. I folded the letter and placed it in the vanity drawer. A few minutes later, the music started outside. They told me it was time. Everyone was waiting for a bride. So was Nathan. The guests turned. They stood. I stepped out of the house, heart hammering in my chest. Each step felt like a decision. Every glance. Every breath. And then I looked up. Halfway down the aisle. And that's when I saw him. Leo. Standing at the back. Not moving. Not hiding. Just watching. But I was still deciding if I could walk toward a life I didn't believe in anymore. The aisle felt longer than I remembered. I stood just outside the garden archway, my hand resting against the doorframe. My dress was fitted perfectly, the lace brushing the floor with every movement. I could hear the soft music starting, strings, light and hopeful. Guests stood. Chairs creaked. Someone whispered, probably about how beautiful the bride looked. About how lucky Nathan was. I took a breath that didn't feel like my own. Then I stepped forward. The sun was soft, low in the sky, casting a warm gold across the lawn. Rose petals were scattered along the aisle. Every detail was in place. Every face turned toward me. And yet I felt completely alone. Nathan stood at the end, waiting. Calm. Composed. His hands folded gently in front of him. His expression so certain it scared me. Each step forward felt heavier than the last. Like I was walking through thick water. Halfway down the aisle, I felt the first crack. It started in my stomach, a twist. Then higher, a flutter in my chest. My hand gripped the bouquet tighter, the stems digging into my skin. I tried to breathe. It didn't help. That's when I saw him. Leo. He stood just beyond the crowd. Near the trees, half in shadow. Still. Silent. His eyes didn't ask anything. Didn't demand. He was just there. Watching. And that nearly broke me. My heart slammed against my ribs. My legs faltered. The world seemed to narrow, sound slipping away. My heel caught slightly on the grass. No one noticed. But I did. It was enough to remind me this was real. I glanced at the guests, rows of family, friends, co-workers, all smiling, all waiting for a woman they thought they knew to make the right choice. I looked at Rachel. She didn't smile. She only nodded once. Barely. Like a signal meant only for me. Keep walking. Or stop. It's still your choice. I turned forward again. Nathan's eyes met mine. Warm. Familiar. Steady. And I realized in that moment he didn't know. He didn't know I'd been thinking about a different life. He didn't know I'd stood on a balcony with another man. He didn't know I hadn't been sure. The officiant started speaking. I didn't hear the first few lines. Just my own breath, fast and shallow in my ears. I felt Nathan take my hand. It was warm. Strong. It was real. My fingers curled around his slowly. The officiant continued. Words like forever, honor, faith. I blinked hard. Then I looked again. Leo hadn't moved. His hands in his pockets. Shoulders tense. But still. Always still. He looked at me like he knew. Not what I would choose, but what it would cost me, either way. And now, the officiant said, Olivia, do you take Nathan to be your husband? The world fell still. My mind emptied. Every beat of my heart seemed to land in my throat. Nathan squeezed my hand gently. It's okay, his eyes said. We're almost there. And that was the problem. Almost. I glanced at the trees one last time. And then I turned back. My voice didn't shake. I do. I made the promise. Now I had to find out if I could live with it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next story.